Three, two. Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. I love talking to authors because they have the courage to take their thoughts, their stories, their lessons, put it down in a book, and share it with the many, ultimately changing their legacy and destiny in the process. And I recommend, as an entrepreneur, that you should write a book simply because of the clarity that you obtain, the self-awareness, but also the opportunities that come along with it. So if you need help with that, check out dreamstarterspublishing.com. We can help you out with wherever you're at in the process. And let's say you already have a book that's already done, published, and now you want to use the book as a gateway to revenue streams. Check out bookmarketingcrm.com. Now, this next guest I'm excited to talk to because he's one of 4 or 5 people who sent me their book the moment they scheduled to be on this podcast. So I'm always honored when people do that. I took a look at it, and there's a few things that stand out right at the beginning of this book. And if you're out there and growing your business and also trying to start a family or grow your family or manage your family, it is tough. Now, I am a single guy, and I'm telling you, my life is surrounded by tasks and missions and adventures with the business. I can't even imagine how difficult it is for the average family man to do the same. So there's a few stats that I want to read off in our guest's book here. Ready for this? 2/3 of the U.S. Employees are disengaged at work. In other words, the vast majority of people have lost the passion, focus, and devotion to truly succeed on the job. I guarantee you've seen that in your company, or you got to be aware of it if it's happening to you. When a woman gets promoted, her likelihood of getting a divorce significantly increases. That's unbelievable. The number one cause of stress at home is considered work or money related, according to the American Psychological Association. And this is something that we've talked about on this podcast before, but we all know the staggering stats on divorce, a number that has hovered around 50%. It's right around 50, might be a little bit more now. So it is wild what's going on. And that's why this next guest wrote this book, Winning Begins at Home, a leadership parable. And, as I always bring up Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's more of a parable. It's in the story form, very much like this. So a strategy to win beyond work. And we have the author with us today, Randy Gravett. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to hang out with you. Thanks for all you do to help us all think about our books and our businesses. And I'm excited about the conversation.
Well, let's start off with the genesis of this book. Maybe if you want to, give a quick glimpse into why you wrote it, but also your background, where you come from, what you were able to accomplish. I'm fascinated with some of the things I'm reading in here. So, where did it all begin, and why'd you write this book?
Yeah, that's good. Well, it started back. I grew up in a little small town. Family was important. I noticed that growing up, and then when I got old, I was in North Georgia. Pardon the accent here a little bit, but I ended up, moving around a few times. We ended up back in Atlanta 30 years ago, and I've been working with leaders basically my whole career. I spent about a decade in education on the front side, working with students, but coaching, all that kind of stuff. But then I ended up working with leaders basically for the last 25 years. And now we have a company that does leader development training, helping people build leadership cultures. All these people are really good at their business part of the technical stuff, but they keep saying, like, where do we find leaders? Nobody ever taught us how to lead meetings and build teams and solve problems, all this stuff that we end up doing with our lives. And so that's what we do with our business side. But we started having conversations with leaders, and over again, they kept talking about work-life balance and how do we win outside of work. One of the things we say is if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And then blow up your family or what, and yet it's hard. And, you talked about a business person writing a book. I think it's important to do that. I'm going to amen what you said, because I think it's important because it causes us to synthesize our ideas, like you said. But it also, for me, it was a reminder that there's stuff that matters outside of work. My wife and I have 4 daughters who are grown now, and we're grandparents now. Actually, they're all married and have their own families. But as I look back on all that, the regret lies not in what didn't happen at work or did happen at work. If there's any regret at all, it really goes back to you didn't pay enough attention to the home stuff. You were there maybe sometimes. I know there were times I was there and I really wasn't there. I just wanted to remind leaders that you can do both. I think you can be successful both. Now, I will say this, Mike. I don't know that there's a people ask all the time, can you have work-life balance? I'm not sure you can. I think you're going to be at work a lot more than you're going to be at home if you don't count when you're asleep. But I think the point is, how are you there when you're there? Like I said, it's important. And so we thought, okay, let's create a blueprint to help leaders think about this stuff. We're creating content all the time to grow organizations and culture and engagement and all that stuff that we talk about with Lead every day. So we thought let's do something to help leaders outside of work, because nobody's really talking about it. And I think at the end of the day, if you play your life forward, you get down the road, you look back, the place where you're going to have regret is if you mess up what happens outside of work, as much as if you don't, make another million or whatever at work. That stuff's great, but it's the other stuff too that matters as well. And so we think we ought to have something to do to pay attention to it. And so we wrote this book, and hopefully it'll serve as a blueprint for leaders everywhere.
Nice. Yeah. And I want to get to your definition of leadership, because whenever I first started this business, or even when I first started my career as a professional, whether it was right out of college, or I wouldn't consider myself a professional, I would consider myself a student still learning. But when I took my career seriously, I thought leadership was a certain way. And in that definition of my leadership, or my own definition of leadership, I always thought that individual was decisive. That individual painted the vision of where they were going to go. And in that, the leader always had all the answers. And my God, did I get that wrong. So as time went on and I learned to be a leader, my first hire, her name was Ashley Palmer. She's still with us to this day. She joined us in 2017 as my first employee. And I used to be, I would say, very direct and not giving up control, because it was my baby. Everything was riding on this company. So it was my way or no way, that type of thing. And as time went on, I realized that doesn't get me too far. Number one, it didn't really get us further as a business, but it did inspire and motivate her to get the best out of her. And as time went on, I had more trust in her, and I gave her more authority within the business. She took it and she gained my trust more. And then I just basically handed over a lot of tasks to her. And I said, listen, here's what I want done. Figure out the best way to do it. And my
Yeah.
God, that was what really set us on fire for a company. So giving up control to me now is part of leadership. It's finding individuals that believe in your vision, but you also have to trust them and give them the tools and resources to just cut down trees and slay the dragons around you so you don't have to do it. So am I right in saying that most people have the definition of leadership wrong from the get-go, like I did?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Here's what I would say. I think you have to decide I love the ask. I think it's a great question. Like, what do you mean when you say leader? Because when we talk about developing leaders in companies, what do we really mean? I mean, is it somebody who's in charge? They have a business card, a parking place. All those things are whatever. But I think a picture is better to think about. And I go back to, I think you've had my buddy Mark Miller on your show before. And Mark is my partner, and we always use a picture. We say that the iceberg is a really good picture of leadership. And if you think about an iceberg, you've probably seen it before, but I think it goes all the way back to maybe fifth grade science or something, they tell me. And I wasn't really paying attention, but the teacher said something like 80% of it is below the waterline. Mm-hmm. And I think there's two sides to leadership, Mike. There's the character side, which is that underneath the waterline. That's what makes you a leader that other people want to follow. And then there's the skill side. You do have to have skills, but most people don't lose their leadership because they forget how to lead a meeting or build a team or solve a problem. They actually forfeit their leadership because of their character. They're not teachable. They're not positive. They don't accept responsibility for their actions. They're selfish versus being selfless. I mean, there's lots of things there, and I think your discernment in knowing, like, this is not going to get us to where I want to go. Because you do have a vision, you're trying to climb a mountain, and yet if the goal is not to get to the top of the mountain and be by yourself. The goal is to get there together. And for me, when I think about our business and I think about all the businesses we work with, it's so easy for the leader, the point leader, to become the bottleneck of everything else if that mindset is not correct. I mean, if we're not locked in on really what we're trying to do, like you're talking about. And so that empowering other people, letting them share ownership. There's so many gifted people, and you give them, something in their passion area and give them an opportunity. And it's amazing how they just run past what I was ever able to do anyway. And so, like you said, we're on fire all of a sudden. I'm going, oh my gosh. I mean, I got a guy on my team. He called me this morning and he's like, dude, you won't believe what's happening. I'm like, I don't believe what's happening. It's crazy. but it wouldn't be happening if it was all me, because it's almost like you end up just spinning plates if you're not careful. And I do know a bunch of leaders who are, Mark and I use the language, they're swimming in quicksand. If we're not careful, it's exhausting, and we know we're not doing our best. We know there's more. And so how do we help leaders get back to the high ground? So when we talk about leadership, I think it starts with that picture. Mark and I always say, if your heart's not right, nobody gives a rip about your skills. You can have great skills, but if your heart's not right and your character's not in check, and people don't want to follow you, you're going to end up forfeiting influence at that point. And so, yeah, I think it's really important question. And that shift that you made is, it sounds like it's been catalytic in your business. And I think so many leaders, when they finally get that, now they're off and running.
Yeah, I think it has to do with being okay with saying you don't know the right way. And sitting in front of my team on Tuesday mornings, I will say, I don't know what the best move is. Guys, what do you think?
Yeah.
It also gives them ownership of the idea. And there's a great way of looking at ideas, and we all have ideas, but let's say I have the idea and I believe that there's an 80% certainty that this idea will actually work in the business. And I give it to someone who does not believe in that idea. Well, they have their own idea maybe. And maybe that idea is 50-50. It might work and might not. It is actually in my best interest as the owner of a company to let them make the decision with their idea, simply because they will commit 100% to that idea that they've created. So it's rather the ownership behind the idea is just as important, and or maybe even more important than the idea itself or the solution, because it really does take the effort behind it to push the snowball or the rock up the mountain. So that's the way I've looked at it, and it really has served us well. And I think that gets more buy-in from the team, because if individuals around you are willing to, get into battle with you, you don't want them just saying, all right, what do I do next? Where do I go? It becomes boring. It's not exciting. And that's why my philosophy is think like an entrepreneur. Run towards the chaos. There's opportunity there. You can win. And my whole team knows this. Think like an entrepreneur. So one thing that I want to touch on is whenever I first started, I was struggling financially terribly. And whenever it comes to my home life, it was so bad. I mean, no running water, couldn't really feed myself, getting a business off the ground. There was no time for dating, no social life. I could barely see my parents. And when I was there, I was sort of a ghost because I couldn't really communicate with them what was going on and how difficult it was. So when you say winning begins at home, can you outline the steps that you think that are required for it to be started on solid ground?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The book, the parable itself, there's a couple pieces to the book. There's the parable. The first 125 pages or so I guess that's right, is the story. And then there's a 70-page activation guide, basically a blueprint. I believe you behave your way to high performance. It's great to believe the right thing and to know the answers to the test. Yep. But if you don't do the practice, exactly, there you go. That to me is the magic. It's like, and I go back to when we years ago. I'll kind of take a little side road here. My wife tells me I want a house, and I'm thinking, well, we have a house, and this was way back. And she's like, I want another house. And I'm thinking, why do we need another house? Kind of, we're kind of in a circle here on this. And she's like, I don't want this house anymore. We need another house. I'm like, okay, why do we need another house? And we had these 4 daughters, and I just didn't have the vision, that she did. She's like, Randy, that we only have 1 bathroom for these 4 girls, and that's not going to work long term. We've got to have more space. And I should have known. We had moved from the sedan to the minivan before that, So it's like you can't get all the car seats in the thing, and so it was kind of crazy at our house with all these girls running around. But my wife comes to me and she's like, I want a house, but she had not just a vision for it, she had a plan for it, and she had literally gone to, I don't know, Staples or Office Depot back in the day, wherever, and bought the graph paper, and she had the whole doggone thing written out, like with every on the pica paper, every square was a square foot, and this closet's going to be here, and this kitchen's going to be there. She had it really thought through in a blueprint. Basically, we had to give it to an architect to get some elevations on the front and where do the light switches go, mechanicals. But other than that, she like, this is what I want. And so we built that house based on that blueprint. Now it would have been laughable. I could have gone to Home Depot or Lowe's and bought some boards and tried to give it a shot. Well, that would have been really stupid. And yet I think so many people, when they think about their home life, even their business life for that matter, if we're not careful, we'll just wing it and hope it turns out okay. And we always hope is not a strategy. It's just, maybe something will get better. That's not a good way to attack it. If we've got a plan and we really can do that, I think that becomes important. Well, the story in the parable in the book is, the setting is a business guy, but it's around he learns his lessons at a little league. He ends up being roped into being a little league baseball coach, a volunteer, and he learns from another guy there who's a successful business guy in town, has been, and he teaches him his stuff. But to me, it's just a fun little setting for this story. And I go all the way back to when I grew up. My dad was one of our baseball coaches, and way back now. But basically, this has been nearly 50 years ago. Aluminum bats had been, I don't know if they had been invented that year or not. I'm going to be the oldest guy in our little league. It's the winter. I'm turning 12 years old, and so I'm excited. I get one of these aluminum bats for Christmas, and I'm thinking this is going to be incredible. I'm going to be hitting home runs, and I'm now the oldest guy in the league. This is going to be a lot of fun. And my dad that spring basically teaches me how to bunt. He's like, we're not going to forget the home runs. We're going to teach you how to bunt. And I'm like, bunt? That's just like, what? Why do we want to bunt? And he basically is, he's an old National League guy back in the day. He'd been a player himself, and he really loved baseball. And he said it's about sacrificing yourself so your teammates can move up on the bases, and then we can score some runs and win the games. It's kind of his mindset. And I had no idea, Mike, at the time, but he was teaching me about how to be a leader. He was teaching me about how to be a businessman. He was teaching me about how to be a dad, how to be a father, a husband, those kind of things. It's like, you're going to, if you get in a family or in a business, either way, you're going to have opportunity after opportunity to sacrifice so somebody else can win. And if you do that, it's almost like the shift that you mentioned a minute ago. When you start helping other people win, it actually, you win more. I mean, which is crazy. You don't do it if you're doing it for that reason, then your motive is not right. Then your heart's not right. People will see through that. But if you really get this lesson right and you begin to help other people succeed, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was going to grow up and have these kids, and we're going to, pay, for groceries and clothes and tuition, and on and on and on, and have opportunity after opportunity as a husband to sacrifice. And, it's just like, if you do get married, even if you have a business or whether you're married or not, if you get involved in relationships with people, it's going to be your classroom to learn how to sacrifice. And so that mindset that I learned even as a kid, some of that spills over into this story. It's pretty cool. But I say the strategy basically is to love first and to live last. And I think that's really good, whether you're at home or at work or wherever you are. If you really do care about people and you're not self-serving, how many people do we know that are self-serving, and we don't want to follow them. We don't want to listen to them. We're not interested in their vision. But if they are serving us and they believe in us, I had a guy just the other day told me, he said, my leader actually is promoting me. And I'm like, congratulations. He said, I'm actually this guy told me, he's like, I'm coaching him. He's like, I'm kind of scared. I'm like, why are you scared? He goes, my leader believes in me more than I believe in me. And he was really struggling with this. But he said, but I follow this guy anywhere. I mean, that mindset of that, they're helping us get where we want to go. And I think whether you're a mom or dad listening, outside of work, the more you understand this principle and get this right, the better it's going to be for your kids, your husband, your wife, whatever, and your employees. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just that opportunity to love first and then to live last. It's the picture I've used the last several months, Mike, is an offensive lineman. And I watch a little football during football season, and you hear about quarterbacks all the time. You hear about running backs and coaches, but nobody's ever talking about offensive linemen. And yet they're the ones. I mean, if you talk to a good coach, they'll tell you that whoever controls the line of scrimmage is going to control the game typically. And it's amazing to me that these offensive linemen, they show up to these games and they get all taped up and they padded up and they go out on the field and they open up holes so other people can score. And they don't really need any credit. They just know I'm doing my job. I'm moving this man out of my way or out of his way, and he's going to score. They're getting all, getting all the glory. And these offensive linemen are so secure, they don't really care. They just like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I think the leader who gets that and can live that way sacrificially at work, and sometimes that means, holding people accountable. I'm not talking about being a doormat here, but if you really come in as a person who's serving others rather than self-serving, and you take that home, you're going to be a lot of fun to work with, and you're going to be a lot of fun to be in a family with. So that kind of a long answer there, but that's the genesis of it.
So do you think that's this philosophy on, I guess you could say, winning at home, or just fatherhood, or just family leadership has changed over the years? The reason why I bring that up is because I was at an event not too long ago, and I think I've heard this at many events, but individuals would get up on stage and they will say, hey, most of us are family men. And we always lie to ourselves by saying, listen, the more we work, the better off our family is. But uh, the chances of us being with our family for their first communion, first games, and all that, we're not there. We're not at home. We're always working, and so we're missing out on our kids' lives, our family existence. But yeah, we're providing money, and we think, and I'm paraphrasing what they've said, but we think that we're doing them a service by doing this. But really, by missing out in their life, we're not there whenever they need us. So it's actually going to crumble, whether it's next week or next year or 5 years from now. Eventually the train is going to run off its tracks. And it kind of hit me. I'm like, wow, you know what? I always was taught, work your ass off, right? Work your ass off. And I think it's a generational thing where maybe we get it from back in the day. That's what they've done. Maybe fatherhood is a little bit different than it was 200 years ago, 150 years ago. So do you think it has evolved? And are you seeing the same thing, that people will lie to themselves, or maybe not lie, it's just they have a certain notion that if they do X, Y, and Z, that's going to take care of their family. And usually, like you said, with these stats right at the beginning of the book, it will lead to divorce.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's what I would say. I'll say a couple things. I do think it's harder now to be a mom or dad than it ever has been, because, and I think technology's been a big part of that. I mean, just the raising a kid now it's just, I can only imagine how challenging that is. I mean, I'm seeing that even with our little grandkids. It's a different world than the world that I had kids in 30 years ago. But I will say, to your question, is it harder? I think it's always been hard. I think if we're not careful, we will hide behind. Here's the way I look at it. I'm successful at work. I get a promotion at work. I get a paycheck at work. I go home and I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. It's sometimes it's just easier to go to work, and it's easier to be, because I know what to do here, and over here I'm not sure I'm getting this right. I don't connect with my 12-year-old, whatever. I'm making this up, but I have these places at home where I'm just not really sure. And that really, honestly, Mike, is one of the reasons we wrote the book. It's like, there's no strategy at home. There's no way to think about this and have language for it. And so we, in the book, we talk about that. Like, what do you do here? I mean, I'm real big on, like, you again, I said it a minute ago, but you behave your way to high performance. There's best practices and tactics and some things that you can do. And I look at maybe a strategic way to think about home. Now, home can't be a strategy. I wouldn't say that. Like, you don't have a strategy in love. It's not love at that point if you do that. But I think having a way to think about the way we talk to each other and the way we treat each other, and are we harsh? And I always heard, you're never persuasive when you're abrasive. I mean, if you're just saying it, my wife tells me, Mike, saying it louder doesn't make you more right. So you got to learn how to communicate and have conversations with people. And do you really want what's best for that person? That offensive line mindset. If you can give that person the benefit of the doubt, and you can let them have the last word. And I think so many people would rather be right than get it right. And it's so easy to now we've got conflict going on all the time. And I don't like that. So I'll just go back to the office. And I guess the essence of the question to me is, there are probably, most likely, you may own the business and you may push back on this, somebody, but most likely there's somebody else who can do what you do at work there's only one dad and only one mom for that kid. There's
Great way to
one,
look at it,
there's
right?
only one spouse for your spouse. I mean, it's like nobody can take your place there. You can't delegate your presence there. And so I would say develop people here to help you scale a business, but you can't scale a family by developing somebody to come in and take your place at the ball game. And I got to go to work. I can't come to the recital. So that's the way I look at it. And you can't be at everything, but you can A, make sure you're there when you're there. And you can B, the more in charge you are over at work, the more you do have an opportunity to say, okay, we're going to put some boundaries in place. We're going to have a family friendly place to work. We do know from research that the more you create that kind of mindset at work, it actually, your people will do better work knowing that they're in a place where they're supported and they can go to a game occasionally or often. I mean, you set up your work schedules now to be where you need to be when you need to be there. So I don't know if that is helpful, but nobody can take your place as a mom or dad or, husband or father.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway there, right? You can outsource your strengths and weaknesses potentially within your business, but that will never be done in your home. So
You don't want to. I mean, I'll just say you don't want to outsource your marriage. That's not going to work.
yeah. So
Or,
another
or if you do try to do that, then you're not. All that money you're trying to pile up.
it's gone. It's gone.
Anyway, they're gone. I mean, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I know some extremely sophisticated, wise, great entrepreneurs, but let's just say you go through that divorce, they've lost half their net worth, half of everything they've created. It's all gone anyway. So,
it's really
there's,
hard. The emotional side of that, even you can't. It's hard. I got buddies. They tell you can't put a price on that part. That's really hard.
yep, there's no doubt. And so, one thing that another guy said, maybe you could touch on this, that his biggest fear, I mean, multimillionaire that I knew, still know, he always says um, that his biggest fear was outgrowing his wife. And I thought to myself, wow, that is never really think of that. I mean, I'm not married, but
Yeah,
yeah, to be on the same page wherever you go, that's got to be so tough. We are in these masterminds that we're talking about high level stuff, getting our vision on the board, getting around the right people, personal development. And if your wife or spouse, let's just say somebody's out there listening and their husband's not on board, it's going to cause so much turmoil eventually, right? Because if you're growing at a certain pace, but the other person's not, the communication is going to break down. So, is
yeah,
there anything you could share when it comes to whether it's being open about the dreams, the vision, being on the same page? Another mentor that I look up to, his name is Patrick Bet David, and he has this great
yeah,
piece of advice. He says that he looks at marriage as a 1 year contract at a time. And every year they get together and they say, we still on for this? We still doing this? Like, and maybe he's being a little bit comedic when he does it, but he's saying, listen, we sign up year to year and
yeah,
we look at it not lifelong. We look at it from year to year, and
yeah,
therefore we give it our all because we have that conversation. And
yeah.
I guess maybe that is what's necessary to just make
Well,
sure, hey, are we on the same page or not?
I was going to say, I always say communication is the oxygen of a relationship. It's the oxygen of your organization at work as well. But it's the power is not in having a list of values and putting them on the break room wall. The power is going and standing by it and saying, what do we mean by this? What do we mean by this? And having real conversations with your employees. I think the same thing is true at home. When you get home, how do you give your spouse the language I use? How do you give your spouse the home field advantage? Let's think about that for a second.
I
So
like that. Yeah.
if we go to our baseball game, what do we have? We have the home team gets to bat last. The crowd is usually tilted in their favor. There you go, exactly. And so it's like, are we really giving our spouse? And even with my daughters when they're growing up, I'm asking myself all the time, what's it like to be on the other side of the table from me? Because I'm charging. I'm like you. I'm like, let's go. Let's build something. Let's do something great. And now I've got these 5 women, counting my wife, that I'm trying to live with, and they needed to be asking what it's like to be on my side of the table too, because it's hard to be the only guy. But when you look at that, you're asking yourself, what's it like to be 14 right now, or 12, or I've got something successful going on, and maybe your spouse is doing something. Maybe your husband is working and he's making less money. You're a CEO and your husband's doing something that he loves, but he's making less money than you are. And if we're not careful, we can start comparing ourselves. And we got to remember we're on the same team here. And so that communication is going to. I like what David says. It's going to breathe life into that relationship year after year after year. and the goal is not to be separated. The goal is to be together. It really, and I think there's a danger here in thinking that we can live in at the same address. I always say proximity does not equal intimacy. And when I mean intimacy, I'm not really talking about sexual intimacy. I'm talking about just connection. You can sleep in the same bed, be married to somebody for 40 years and not really be connected to them. You just kind of go into the motions. You can work with, same thing at work. You can work with people for a decade. And if you don't talk to each other and you're not really on the same page toward the same vision, you can miss out. But if you really get connected and aligned on stuff, it's amazing what begins to happen in the company, at home, wherever you are. And so I think that communication is the piece there. And if your wife or your husband is, reading something and you're not interested in that, you should be interested in them and at least be willing to have some conversations. What are you learning and why do you like that so much? It's easy to get to know each other when we're dating, but do we still want to get to know each other? Laura and I've been married, it'll be 37 years in a couple of weeks. And so we're still trying to get to know each other. And this is really hard. I mean, it's like, because we're all selfish and we all, I love me some me, right? I don't want to, but when it comes to thinking about what's this other person going through, what's it like to be them, it just comes by having a conversation about it. And then when you start sharing that stuff, now you realize this is a person who's going to stick with me and I'm going to stick with them. And I always tell her if if she ever leaves me, I'm going to go with her. I mean, it's like she stuck with me. We're kind of there at this point, but I think you have to work on that through the years, because you get in a relationship long term. There's going to be lots of ups and downs. There really are no perfect families, and but I think giving that person the home field advantage, showing interest in, she's into antiques and stuff. And how many times have I gone to an antique show with her? And I was like, I don't care, but I care about her. And the same thing, she's been with me to stuff that she doesn't care about, but she cares about me. And so I think we just remember we're trying to nurture that relationship. And I like the year after year after year, knowing that we've made a lifetime commitment, but it's a lot of micro steps to get to, down the road where you end up hopefully having a legacy.
Well, in that first stat that I read out, 2/3 of U.S. employees are disengaged at work. What do you attribute that to? So in the parable that you share within the book, it talks about a very successful business owner. I've not read the book, but maybe there's something that you have come across within that when it comes to business owners, maybe there's just a passion that's in them and they try to maybe instill that in others around them. But the average workforce member takes that job for a specific reason. Most likely they get out of school, they take on debt, they have to get a job to pay off that debt. They only look at the money, not what they do. They look at it as temporary. Something happens, they buy a car, they get a house, they have a kid, they get married, they're more in debt, they can't leave. Now they're chained to it. And they keep rising in the ranks, slowly but surely. And it becomes these golden handcuffs that if they left, it hurts them at home, hurts them financially. And so the pathway that you're on is actually going to, stipend or stifle, I guess is the word, stifle your growth as a person and as somebody who has a dream that they might not be able to obtain if they keep holding out. It makes me think of a movie called Revolutionary Road. Have you ever read? Have you ever? I think it's a book too, but have you ever seen that movie?
I'm not.
Okay, it's a Leonardo DiCaprio and his co-star from Titanic. Anyways, they get married and they have all these dreams of going to France, but all their friends and family around them say, "You're silly. You're foolish for doing that. Stay here, work on your career." And they're like, "No, we're dreamers. We're gonna go." She gets pregnant. She has the baby. All of a sudden, hey, I got a promotion at work, and then slowly but surely they drift apart because they both want two different things, and it starts with that debt, kid, job. So what have you noticed when it comes to this stat? Is there anything that can be done? Do you have any wisdom within the book you could share with us on this podcast?
Yeah, I'll go back. This is not in the book per se, but I got some thoughts on this. So we actually do some workshops on engagement for companies. I think so many companies are struggling here with this question. And the statistics bear that out. I've seen some numbers as low as 20% of people are leaned in at work, and then 80% really don't care about what the boss cares about, which is staggering when you think about it. We're talking about it on our show a couple of weeks ago, and this statistic actually came up, and our conversation was a lot of people think that's a picture of the sorry state of the American workforce. It's actually worse globally. It's about 15% globally are engaged. I think that's not really what's going on. I think it's actually a picture of the sorry state of American leadership. I think people don't usually leave organizations; they actually leave leaders, Mike. They don't
Wow. Yes.
think
Okay. I've
about
heard that before.
it. And truthfully, there's nothing worse than your people have left you. In this case, they've left you, but they haven't actually told you yet. They're still taking your payroll. They're sucking up morale. They're negative. I mean, they're still there, and yet they're not there. And there's lots of reasons for that. Maybe as a leader, I
Quiet
see
quitting, they call it, right? Quiet quitting.
quiet quitting or the great resignation or whatever. Maybe I've given, let's say you're on my team and I've given you responsibility for something, and I don't really like, well, I didn't probably train you to start with. My orientation for you or my training for you was something like this. Hey, Mike, if you need anything, let me know. And then I moved on to whatever else. And I'm like, I didn't teach you how to do it. I didn't do any, I didn't resource you. And now you're struggling. And I'm over here going, dude, what's wrong with Mike? He's leaned out. And so what I do is I'll come back and I'll say, it's just easier for me to go ahead and do it. And I'll put my hands back in your work. And now you got leaders everywhere who are doing other people's job. And I always tell leaders, it's not your job to do their job. It's your job to lead. It's your job to resource. It's your job to provide vision and boundaries and develop people and all that. And so if I get that right, it works. If I don't, now we end up with just this disastrous, we got a payroll full of people who aren't really doing their work. I'm exhausted as a leader because I'm doing everybody else's job. They're exhausted because they're not really using their gifts. They're just showing up and they feel bad about it, but they leave. And I think, to answer the question, it's a leadership issue. They don't, they really do leave leaders. It's like, and so I think leaders, we have some things that we can do to help them re-engage, give them responsibility, affirm them, connect them to the vision, connect them to the employees, connect them to the customers, whatever the business is. They're create an environment. There's things we can do on our side. And if your people begin to care, it is like a bomb goes off and good stuff. I say that's probably the wrong way to say it, but it's like, I mean, it's just like a fire begins to spread, and it is crazy what happens when your people lean in if they haven't been. And we're seeing from some of our work, we're seeing engagement scores double, triple. It's amazing what happens when you just start focusing on some of the things that leaders can do. But if you don't focus on it, and we always say no organization or no team drifts to greatness. It's just not going to happen. It's got to be led there. And so engagement is a huge issue. I don't know how you can go to a positive place with negative people. And really, when you think about engagement, that negativity is it's not far behind. It's going to fill that space where we don't communicate. Negativity will take up the space.
Absolutely. And I was reading about the happiest men on earth, right? And I watched a documentary. I listened to an individual who studied this stuff on whenever they were speaking about it on a podcast. I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast. And they said that there's a common trend that the happiest men are most likely, I guess you could say, on a mission, right? They have a mission day to day. And that mission is they can track if they're winning or losing, if they're getting what they want or not. And when you talk about the parable of, just being in baseball, whether it's little league or, a sport, a high level sport, doesn't matter. The mission of winning, wanting to win and get better and transform, whether it's the family, getting that house, keep growing that family, right? There's got to be something on the horizon that we're all trying to seek. And is there anything you could share when it comes to being mission oriented or the want to win that is a part of our DNA that maybe that's what some people lose as time goes on, right? There are many great athletes in college. They get out, they take a job, and that competitive drive dies, and a piece of their soul goes away. But whenever they can figure out how to bring it back to life in their life, it's whenever things start to sync up and they enter that flow state that really makes life worthwhile. So anything you could share in regards to that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that we are here for a reason. When we have purpose and we realize there's a reason that we're here, And for each person, you get to decide what your reason is and why you have that. Yeah, I mean, you can be a person of faith and understand that, or you can be a person who's got a goal at work. And I mean, like, you get to decide how you frame it up. I personally believe that we've been given an opportunity. We have a life. I am a person of faith, and so I don't think it's an accident that we're here. I think there's a if we're not careful, we'll just begin to go through the motions. And I heard a few years ago, Nick Saban, the former Alabama football coach. My wife went to Auburn, so we were glad to see Nick Saban retire. That was good.
Oh, one of my clients is not going to enjoy what you just said,
Yeah,
just so you know.
I'm sorry, but I heard him say a few years ago they had beaten Auburn and Georgia in back-to-back weeks. I think they had beaten Auburn last game and Georgia the SEC championship game. This was a few years ago, and a reporter asked him. I thought this was fascinating. His response, it was so quick. The reporter says, "How does it feel to beat your two biggest rivals in back-to-back weeks?" And Nick Saban doesn't blink. He said, "Auburn and Georgia are not our rivals. Complacency is our rival."
Wow.
I just thought and that's why we needed him to retire, because a guy thinking like that is like, that guy, he's not competing against other teams. He's competing against himself and a standard and how good they could be. And I think, really your question is about our purpose, that we wake up every day. What are we doing? I mean, why are we here? Why does it matter? And who are we representing? I mean, when we start thinking these things and asking ourselves these questions, like you should do work that you're proud of. You should do work that, now it's still going to be work and there's monotony and it's, I mean, I understand the grind of it. But those mundane moments, though, are the places where we have a chance every day to flex that purpose and say, I'm here to help somebody get better. And for me, one of the things I like to do, and this will resonate with you and a lot of your listeners, I like to ask myself, when I lie down at night, did I help somebody win today? And I think if I didn't help somebody else win, I don't personally consider myself a winner at that point. But if I really know that I helped somebody else get a little better today, I got better, I helped somebody else get better, that to me is, I mean, again, you get to decide how you define winning, but however you define it, I don't know many people that wake up in the morning and think, I hope I lose today. I think what happens is a lot of people lose, though, because they don't give a lot of thought to it. They don't give a lot of thought of what they're trying to do, what they're trying to do at home, what they're trying to do at work. I think when we have a plan and we have a strategy and we have a purpose, we've got an opportunity to have some serious impact. And you're probably like me. We can think back of people who have invested in us, helped us, and we wouldn't be where we are were it not for that. And so we never know when you help somebody in a small way. It may seem like nothing to you, but to them, it may be huge, and it may put them on a path to be able to tell their story. And I just think the world will be a lot better if we all thought that way. I'm pretty convinced at this point that the government is not going to fix all the, we got a mess going on, and it doesn't matter which way you vote. I mean, I'm just like, it's not the government's responsibility. It's not I got buddies who are educators, really great teachers, have been for a long time, school descended, and they're telling me over and over, education is very important. We need it, but like the school system's not going to fix everything that's going on. It's just not going to happen. But I think when leaders that like your listeners and like you and me, when we decide to show up and help somebody else, and we're selfless in doing that, I just think things get better. And, it's the old doing good is good business. And I believe that. And I think having a great family makes it great for the people at home and the other families around, in your neighborhood, community, whatever you got going on. So to me, we need a lot more of that going on. And, we're just trying to show up every day and help people think about some of that kind of stuff as well as grow their businesses and all that. I love the profits and, execution, and that stuff is great. But there's the businesses that are doing the best, that if you ask me, they have purpose that is bigger than just the P&L. It's like they have a reason that they're there. I'll give you one quick example. Last week I was speaking to a group of plumbers, which was kind of wild out on the West Coast. And I reminded them that day, I said, is there anybody on the planet who has a more important job than you? And they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, can you imagine a world without water? I mean, it's just, you could for about 3 days and then we'd all be dead. I mean, it's like, you're providing something that we have to have. And one of the guys was like, it's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget. We're just putting pipes together, and it's a nasty job, whatever. But when we start thinking about we're actually helping people survive, that reframes it, and it's still the same work. But when I know I'm on a mission, I know I'm on I've got purpose, like you're talking about. Man, it's pretty motivating at that point to show up every day and do your best.
Yeah. I heard a great quote. The best business plan in the world is just care. The more you care, right? They just care about your clients, care about the mission, care about the people you're serving, and that takes care of a lot. And there's a great way of tying in Apple with what you just said. It's not that they build computers and the computers will change the world. Their intention is to change the world. And the way they
Right,
do that is through computers
right.
and phones and all that, right? So it reframes everything, and you really can tie meaning to whatever you do, whether it's water, whether it's taxes, whether it's financial services. You are right. When it comes to personal responsibility, we need to take more of that, because that means, okay, if I gotta evaluate the value that I offer the world, and if I can just muster up the courage to articulate that to the marketplace and serve other people, it's up to me to make the world better, not the government and not all the other nonsense that's out there. Personal
Yeah,
responsibility. I believe it's the entrepreneur that will always change the world. The
I love
government
that.
creates the problems. The
Yeah,
entrepreneur fixes them.
one company we've done a lot of work with is Chick-fil-A. You're probably familiar with
Of
Chick-fil-A.
course.
They have changed their they've literally changed their vision statement to now they're saying we want to be the most caring company in the world. I love that. It has nothing to do with chicken. It has not. It's literally they're like, how do we create an environment where people can come into a restaurant? And I heard Dan Cathy explain. He said restaurant comes from a French word which literally means to restore. And he talked about how when a person comes to our restaurant, we want them to be restored emotionally. We want them to be obviously physically. They're coming to get food, but we want them to feel connected with and they talk to employees. We talk to their employees when we're talking to them about the level of care. And it's exactly what you're saying. We define engagement is go back to engagement. We define engagement as does somebody care or not? And
Yeah,
you
right.
can't pay people to care. You either care or you don't. And you can't demonstrate care unless you care. I mean, so I think this is a big opportunity for us to all care more. So it's
It's how you
good.
stand apart, right? I think
I think
it's becoming easier to win because more and more people are not caring. So I think this is a great a time for an advantage, guys. Take
that is
advantage of it and
sure.
serve your clients at a higher level. Care more. Watch what happens.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
guys, I have to run here in a bit, here in a few minutes, but I want to make sure that we put this in the notes, the show notes too, because this is important. Leadeveryday.com. When they go to it, they can actually schedule a call with you or your team. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're helping organizations. We do keynotes and training and leadership culture and all kind of stuff. Lot of organizations we have a multi-year relationship with. We'll help them build a leadership culture. Yeah, leadeveryday.com. They can find us there. Love to serve anybody we can. And also just mention the book. It's going to launch on June 11th, just a week away. You got your early little reader copy there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the hardback's out, and if anybody's looking for a last minute Father's Day gift, this would be a good something for somebody, or a belated Mother's Day gift. But don't forget the moms either. You don't have to be a baseball fan to enjoy the story. You're going to connect with this business guy and the tension that he feels in trying to win at work and win at home. But ultimately, like I said, if you win at work and lose at home, I think you still lose. So we're trying to give you a strategy here. I hope you'll get the book, and if we can help you, let us know.
Very easy to read, guys. And I love simple and clean books. I'm telling you, it's a fast read just by looking at them. I'm a guy who publishes books, so I look at the formatting and the text that you use, and very quick read. If you go through it, it's going to be the way I picked up on it. It's very well written. So great work. It comes out June 11th. I had no idea that was the date. Is that Father's Day? Is that
Yeah,
Father's? Yeah.
no,
Okay.
week before Father's Day, so it's June 11th though. We're that's the pub date. So
All righty. Good. Guys, pick it
on
up.
Audible, I think a week or two after that. I just did my first Audible. I had to read the Audible a couple weeks ago. So that was all new. So yeah, it's good.
Guys, pick it up if you can and leave a review. That's very, very significant.
That'd be
And
awesome.
Randy Gravitt's a good guy. He sent me this book early, and I actually thought it was available to this right now. So wait till June 11th, pick up on Amazon as
Yeah.
the
And
pre-order, I
by the
guess.
way, if I will say this, if people do pre-order the book now, they can go to winningbeginsathome.com, and we've done a course. We're going to give them that course and access to our leadership academy and all that stuff. So that's all available. Winningbeginsathome.com. I think it's like $150 worth of stuff we're giving free. So anybody that pre-orders the book, go get you can get the course, and I kind of walk you through all that. So
Beautiful.
if that'd be helpful,
Winningbeginsathome.com. Excellent.
winningathome.com. Yep, that'd be great.
Awesome. Randy Gravitt, thank you so much for being here, man. Yeah, I could talk to you for hours. You're a good guy. So thanks for being here and sharing your wisdom and promoting the book.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate all you do, man.
Thank you. Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.